Keelan.
Honorable Begay, thank you. Honorable members of RDC, this legislation moves on to Budget and Finance and the Etiquette Committees, and the full Navajo Nation Council has final authority. Are there any comments or questions? Going twice. Going 3 times. Honorable Vice Chair Walker, how do you vote?
I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Begay?
Chairman Keelan with green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Daniels?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Freeland?
Vote green.
Thank you, Honorable Freeland. Honorable Stewart?
Green, Chairman.
Thank you. We have a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting. Motion carries on legislation 0221-22. Shanella, Honorable Vince James.
Thank you, RDC. Thank you.
Oh, we'll move down to C, approving travel to Washington, D.C. from Sunday, December 4th to Thursday, December 8th. To lobby the Biden administration and congressional leadership on natural resources matters as it relates to the energy, environmental protection, housing, transportation, water rights, and etc. Honorable members of RDC, let's have a motion and a second.
Motion, Daniel.
Honorable Daniels, thank you. Second by?
Chairman, I second.
Honorable Vice Chair Walker, thank you. Any comments or questions? I hear none. Honorable Vice Chair Walker, how do you vote?
Chairman, I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Begay?
Chairman Keelan votes green.
Thank you. Honorable Daniels?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Freeland?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Stewart?
Green, Chairman.
Thank you. We have a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed. Chair not voting. Motion carries. We'll approve this travel to DC. Under D, approving travel to Clark County, Nevada to attend and participate in the 2022 Intertribal Agriculture Council Annual Conference, We Belong Here, from Monday, December 5th to Friday, December 9th. Let's have a motion and a second.
Chair, I motion.
Second,
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Also, Honorable Stewart. Any comments or questions? I hear none.
This is
Okay.
Daniel.
Honorable Daniels, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, yeah, good old the Vice Chair and the good old colleagues, good old RDC members. Those good old new colleagues, 24th Council, good old Washington, good old I know that the IAN hit that being on the Resources and Development Committee, Clark County, the Hickey, the great conference, a coco, the area about night, just kid or let it keep going on the Kodosity. Not that I see Kodoi, the rate at the whole team, Kodona rate, and you can base on the Yan Dagi. I got DDO the rate, Khalid Elan for Ecuador. I know that at the state that the team hit that the Diego, RDC. I don't know, Ecuador, and again, rate, not a hija, the rate, a hundred. Adbanata, we net or did about the whole net at the Nisha Hodo. ado leben kinodai arbana huil na sakodo so kodo ni ta hot iso te ado na ti kodo so na te ite na yego yen hein kati te na reya ndatul tako oya sai de bi oya ndatoka oya hatna da na lo la do da yata til kodo ba do ya ko ni da sai do ni da na hada in ne so dan sakes kodo kodo te me ala da sakes so ala da yasti ado na ti kodo social media hat nigi is dot da kodo hasin da na alfain na hala sulne hodida okay idea oya ba sinne oya kodo Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Daniels, for your concern and having to express your concern on the record as far as the Oversight, Resources and Development Committee over agriculture matters. It's our jobs to attend conferences wherever they are held at. As we all understand, according to the ethics and government law, when you're on travel conducting business for the Navajo Nation, it is a no-no to have any type of consumption of alcohol when you're on the job. So, RDC members, you don't do those things. So I'm proud of you that you don't go out and consume alcohol in any way when we go on our government business. But I'd like to go to Ms. Khan and have her reiterate that this is according to our oversight authorities, that we are the oversight over agricultural matters, and this is something that we do. So, Ms. Khan, if you would.
Yes, Mr. Chair, let me read that into the record with regard to the RDC's authorities according to Title 2, Section 5. Just a second here. 500 series of Title 2, RDC 5, Section 500, Establishment, Membership, Purposes of the Resources and Development Committee. Section 500C, the committee shall exercise oversight authority over water, land, grazing, environment, environmental protection, cultural resources, agriculture, livestock, wildlife, roads and transportation, air transportation, communications and utilities, information technology, chapter activities, economic and community development, commerce and trade, gaming, rights of way, minerals, public utilities, telecommunications, housing, and such. And as I have read, certain topics would be included in the agricultural annual conference that's being held in Nevada, and that topic is specifically mentioned at Title 2, Section 500C, Oversight over Agriculture. Mr. Chair, and that's the general authority with regard to oversight authority. And of course, the Resources and Development Committee does have oversight authority over the Division of Natural Resources, and the Division of Natural Resources also includes the everything, all the departments within the Division of Natural Resources, many of which also work with the topic of agriculture, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Khan, for that. Honorable members of RDC, any other comments or questions? I hear none. Honorable Vice Chair Walker, how do you vote?
Chairman, I vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Begay?
Chairman Kale, what's green?
Thank you. Honorable Daniels?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Freeland?
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Stewart?
Green, Chairman.
Thank you. We have a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting. Motion carries. We'll go back up to number 5, receiving reports. But before we start the reports, I'd like to have our Law and Order Committee Chair, Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton, introduce herself. Honorable Chair Charles Newton.
Good morning, Chair Nance. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, RDC. This is Delegate Charles Newton. I am on the call. My clans are Bit'athni, born for the Ashe. So I appreciate listening in and the invitation to be a part of the RDC call. It's always really nice, Chair Nez, that Mr. Tahi sends this invitation out to the 24th Navajo Nation Council. So I am on the call. Thank you, Chair Nez.
Thank you for joining RDC call for today's meeting. Number 5, receiving reports. A report from the Department of Fish and Wildlife and Department of Agriculture on the release of the Mexican gray wolves and its impact on the Navajo Nation. Presenters will be Mr. Brent Powers, Leanne Begay, and Mr. Leo Watchman. Mr. Powers, are you on the call?
Yes, good morning, Chair, and good morning, RDC. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, you have 20 minutes starting now. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Is the presentation up? I'm calling in, so I hope the presentation is up.
Mr. Tahi?
Mr. Powers, the presentation was emailed to RDC members and I can put up on the screen as well.
If you could put it on the screen, and then if you could advance the slides for me, that would be very much appreciated.
The chair members of RDC, the PowerPoint presentation is on the screen and also emailed to each of the members.
Yes, we received it this morning at 7:48. Thank you.
So everyone should be viewing the initial title page here. So I'm Brent Powers. I'm a zoologist here for the Navajo Natural Heritage Program, and I'll give you all a brief presentation here on Mexican gray wolves. Next slide. So I just want to first acknowledge that the information that's shared here in this presentation is compiled, gathered, and analyzed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This information is publicly available, and anyone can find this. I've shared a link here for folks who are interested who would like to see that information. Next slide. Biology and life history. Mexican gray wolves are our smallest and rare subspecies of wolf in North America. They range from 50 to 90 pounds, stand at about 25 to 32 inches at the shoulder, and have very similar colorations as what you'd see in coyotes. It is important to note that there are no solid black or white color variations in the Mexican gray wolf populations in New Mexico and Arizona, unlike other gray wolf populations in places like Yellowstone and areas further north. Next slide. Just a quick size comparison chart for everyone so we kind of understand the size of this animal. They're smaller than their cousins, the bigger gray wolves or timber wolves, but slightly larger than coyotes. And just kind of a nice comparison here for us to see the difference here. I think some people would confuse a running Mexican gray wolf with a coyote, just thinking it was a large coyote, and that's a common thing that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service biologists hear, and we'll get into that in another slide. So next slide, please. This Mexican gray wolves were once common throughout the Southwest, including areas of Navajo Nation. They were extirpated from the region by 1970 due to conflicts with ranching and livestock. In 1976, the species was federally listed as endangered, and soon thereafter, the last remaining wolves were removed from the wild and put into breeding facilities. In 1998, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service released its first captive-raised Mexican wolves into the Mexican wolf experimental population area in Arizona and New Mexico. Next slide. So there are several regulations that apply to how wolves are managed. Principally is the Federal Endangered Species Act. Importantly, though, is that the wolf population is deemed an experimental population, which affords certain leniencies and other management options for dealing with wolves that otherwise wouldn't be allowed if it wasn't deemed an experimental population. So it's critically important that the experimental designation stays, because without that, we wouldn't be able to do things like hazing, harassment, capturing animals and moving them to different locations, things of that nature. So it's an important regulatory element of the management strategies for Mexican gray wolves in the Southwest. Next slide. So there is an online interactive viewer. Anyone can go look at and see near real-time updates as to where wolves are. It's usually like a week delay for the public viewer, just to protect wolves from killings. People who want to go out there, find a wolf and kill it. But you can go online and look at this. I just want to call out, you can see that this large red area that covers, pretty much follows I-40 through the states of Arizona and New Mexico. Anything south of I-40 is considered the Mexican wolf experimental population area. And then they have other zones within that broader landscape. You saw a similar slide here presented from last week with last week's presenter. Next slide. Zoom in, and you can zoom in and go around and look at where wolves are in near real time. I just want to call out here, so we're looking at the kind of Arizona, New Mexico border, south of Gallup, south of Rama, Navajo. The purple polygons that you see, those are established wolf packs and their locations. So you can see you get pretty good fine scale detail, and you kind of know where animals are at any given time. Next slide. And here's the link for this online viewer. Anyone is welcome to go on there at any point in time and take a look at where the wolves are. Next slide. Briefly, just a very pretty map here that kind of shows where the established territories are and packs are located. You can see most of them are actually in this slide. This is a year old, so there has been some changes somewhat recently, but they try to keep the wolves south of Camado in the Gila and some of the other national forests that are down in the southern part of states of Arizona and New Mexico. Next slide. So changing gears here to kind of current status. This is from their 2021 report. So this is this last calendar year. They publish quarterly and yearly reports on Mexican wolf management. All this can be found at that website. Next slide. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has established population goals that you saw in slides from the previous presenter last week. It is true they do have a population goal of at least 320 wolves in the wild over an 8-year time period. That also includes 100 wolves in Mexico. So this is a cross-country management project. And they also have these genetic diversity goals because the founding population, when back in 1976, 77, when they pulled wolves out of the wild, was very small. And so there's a genetic bottleneck there. So the captive breeding facilities keep stud books, and they know who breeds with who out in the wild to some extent. And they try very hard to cross foster pups and put them into packs where there is low genetic diversity, and are trying to bolster that. So that's a very important goal for wolf management here. Next slide. At current 2021, there was 196 Mexican wolves in the experimental population area. That included 25 breeding pairs. This figure here just showing that population trend through time from 1998 through 2021. You can also see reproduction tracking slightly below, but kind of in a similar upward trend with population. This is minimum population count, so it's very likely that they've missed animals doing their helicopter survey work, but we at least have a minimum number established in the wild. And then also pup recruitment. You can see pup recruitment in that green line just kind of trails behind or below reproduction and kind of slightly lower than what we would hope. Next slide. So cross-fostering of wolf pups could be our next slide. Yeah. This is the critical aspect of wolf recovery in the Southwest. In 2021, they released 22 genetically diverse pups into 8 wolf duns. Of those 22 released, 10 remained alive to their first year of life, to when they could attach a radio collar, a GPS collar on the animal. These wolf pups, when they're released, are only a few weeks old. They generally have pretty high acceptance rates into a den. And so it's one very effective strategy in management. Next slide. So pup survival, as I kind of alluded to, is low. This slide showing mortalities here, both of adults and of pups. In 2021, pup survival decreased by 39%. This was a 13% decrease from the previous year, 2020. However, they had 56 pups survive to the end of the year. So that includes fostered, cross-fostered pups, as well as wild-born pups. Next slide. So what kills wolves? Frankly, it's people. You can see here, illegal killings account for 57% of all wolf mortalities, followed by 17% as natural causes of death, an injury that gets infected and the animal dies from something like that. And then the next highest mortality is vehicle collisions. So humans are the issue here when it comes to wolf management. It is a human dimensions management issue. It's not an issue of habitat or anything else other than that. Next slide. So we all know wolves do kill livestock. It is the major issue when it comes to Mexican wolf recovery efforts. This is depredation rates through time, so 2009 through 2021. This is confirmed kills, as you saw in the presentation last week, that the kill has to be confirmed by a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or USDA staff person. They have a fairly rigorous approach in doing that, and it is a point of contention with the ranching community. Regardless, you can see that the overall goal here is to keep mortalities, depredation events at the 10-year average, about 58 animals per 100 wolves. We're slightly above that, but they're working hard to get it below this. The good news is that depredation rates in 2021 decreased by 27% from the preceding year. Next slide. So looking at the two states, right, we have wolves both in Arizona and New Mexico. The red line here through the graph showing that 10-year average at 58 depredation events per 100 wolves. You can see in general, Arizona, their depredation rates are below, or kind of just below, the 10-year average, whereas New Mexico is substantially higher. That's likely just due to there are many more wolves in New Mexico than there are in Arizona. Next slide. So you hear stories about wolves negatively interacting with people and the threat they pose to children and how they hunt people down. All of that is false. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has been doing a good job of tracking these negative interactions, and I'm not suggesting that they don't occur. I'm saying that these may be hyperbole, they may be taken out of context or out of proportion. So this graph here showing imminent threats, potential threats, and nuisance incidents. There are known recorded imminent threats to human life since 2017. I don't believe that they were recording this data from 2016 and earlier, but point is that wolves are not attacking people. There are a handful, and one in 2017 and only a couple in 2019 through 2021 of potential threats to humans. And then the majority of negative interactions with people constitutes nuisance incidents. You know, someone sees a wolf in their pasture and they're upset. So next slide. So what do wolves need? Wolves, these are forest dwelling animals. These animals are not going to be found in low desert type habitats. So they need forested mountainous terrain, access to water, access to den sites, areas with relatively few roads, and abundant prey. And wild prey being elk and deer. Obviously, they're also going after livestock, cattle, sheep, goats, those sorts of things. Next slide. On Navajo Nation, we really only see dispersing individuals. We don't have any resident packs set up on Navajo Nation, and where we have measures in place to ensure that that continues. We have a direct line of communication with the Mexican wolf recovery team, with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as our other partners in Arizona Game and Fish and New Mexico Game and Fish to discuss these issues. And so when an animal does venture onto Navajo Nation, it can be removed quickly. We have provided comments to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on their recovery efforts and Navajo Nation's position that we do not want wolves on Navajo land, and that they do come up here, we have to have them removed as quickly as possible. Next slide. So the concerns and risks here with Navajo Nation are really similar to anywhere else, right? It's depredation of livestock. The human health aspect of this and the human risk of this is incredibly low to non-existent. You probably are at greater risk of being attacked by a mountain lion than you are of being attacked by a wolf. There are policies and procedures in place to swiftly address wolf issues on Navajo Nation through our partnership with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Arizona Department of Game and Fish. Overall, across Navajo Nation, there's likely a low probability that wolves would ever establish a territory on Navajo. And it's mostly influenced by the fact there is low social tolerance for this predator. People just simply are not going to tolerate that animal on the landscape on Navajo, which is unfortunate, but that is what it is. There are high populations of feral domestic dogs. These animals can transmit lethal pathogens to wild canines, mostly parvo, canine distemper, those things. So that's another thing that might negatively influence established packs, or if a pack were to establish on Navajo. And lastly, our habitat is poor. The drought, feral livestock, all these other issues relating to range management and landscape management also negatively affect our wildlife and our ability to have them on the landscape. And so that's just another challenge that the wolves would have to overcome. Next slide. I just want to highlight here quickly for everyone the unique relationship that Navajo Nation, and in particular our department, shares with our federal and state counterparts, whether that's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Arizona Game and Fish, or New Mexico Game and Fish. Without this interrelationship between these various agencies, sharing information back and forth and having open lines of communication and understanding, we would not be able to manage our rare and culturally important animals across Navajo Nation. Things like our black-footed ferret recovery project that we're working on currently. We received federal dollars from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to try to understand if it's possible to reintroduce this critically endangered species onto Navajo Nation. Similar for things like southwestern willow flycatcher or some of our plant species like Mesa Verde cactus. The ask that has been put before Navajo Nation by the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association is concerning, because joining into an open lawsuit and open litigation with our federal counterparts is scary, and also it makes it difficult for us to do work with our federal counterparts then if we're openly attacking them on these issues. I do want to stress that we have an open line of communication with the service. We have regular weekly updates on wolf locations. This is a topic that is highly monitored, and all the policies and procedures are in place to address this issue when it happens on Navajo. And it happens almost every year. We have wolves that come up onto Navajo nearly every summer, or at least during dispersal seasons. So the tools are available. We have the tools in place, and we are actively doing these things to ensure that the concerns of wolves on Navajo are addressed. And more importantly, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has received our comments in formal consultation, government-to-government consultation. They know the wishes of Navajo Nation, that we do not want wolves on Navajo. And they have so far been respecting those wishes. Next slide. And that should be it. So I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Powers. Leanne Begay, are you on the call?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the RDC committee. So that was a presentation by our zoologist from the Navajo Department of Fish and Wildlife Natural Heritage Program. Our program has been involved in communications with the New Mexico Game and Fish Office and the Arizona Game and Fish Office. And the summary that he has provided is a lot of information. Of course, it's taken over, I believe, at least 3 years for the both of us being on board here within Fish and Wildlife. And we do support the stance provided by the Navajo Nation by the previous submissions of comments that there's no that there's recommendations for not supporting Mexican gray wolves here on the Navajo Nation. And we are really good partners and collaborators with our federal and state partners, and we wish to continue that effort because it does provide significant amount of information and data for our nation, especially the project that Brent previously mentioned for the black-footed ferret. That's very unique.
Ms.
Yes.
Begay, you pause one moment.
Sure.
Time expired. Honorable members of RDC, may we have an additional 10 minutes for Ms. Begay as well as Mr. Watchman? Are there any objections to this? I hear none. Ms. Begay, you may continue. We have an additional 10 minutes between you and Mr. Watchman.
Great, thank you for that additional 10 minutes. So again, I just wanted to thank the RDC for inviting us to present the information that we have on the Mexican gray wolves, and that will continue to partner with the federal and state agencies on the current proposals and management of the Mexican gray wolves, and just to continue to be partners with notifications, especially when wolves do approach Navajo Nation lands, and also again to work collaboratively with our partners for the quick removal as expedient as possible as well too, just for the protection of the Navajo Nation, the people and the resources. So that's all I wanted to provide as a quick summary after Brent's presentation, and we are available for any questions or comments as well.
Thank you, Ms. Begay. Mr. Watchman? Mr. Leo Watchman. Honorable
Chairman,
members of audience. Yes, go ahead.
Chairman, I don't see Mr. Leo Washman on the call. I did send him an email letting him know that this meeting is in session and that his presence is required. Back to you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Honorable members of RDC, let's have a motion and a second. Motion.
Yeah.
Who is that?
Chairman Callan.
Honorable Begay, motion, second by.
I'll second that.
Honorable Vice Chair Walker, is that you?
Yes, Chairman, I second that.
Okay, thank you. Honorable members of RDC, do you have any comments or questions on the report? This is a continuation from last Wednesday. Going twice. Going three times. Honorable Vice Chair Walker, how do you vote?
I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Begay.
Chairman Callan, votes green. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Daniels.
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Freeland. Honorable Freeland. Honorable Stewart. Honorable Freeland. Honorable Stewart. We have a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Powers and Ms. Begay, for providing this presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Have a good day. Honorable
You
members
too.
of RDC, we're down to number 8 on the agenda, close of meeting. Any announcements? Just a reminder, we're having a teleconference call with Ms. Khan, Land Department, General Land Development Department, as well as Department of Justice on mission site leases, Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Chairman, I motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Walker. Second,
Callan.
Honorable Begay. Thank you. Any comments or questions? None. Honorable Vice Chair Walker, how do you vote?
Chairman, I vote green.
Thank you. Honorable Begay.
Green. Callan.
Thank you. Honorable Daniels.
Green.
Thank you. Honorable Freeland. Honorable Stewart. We have a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, chair not voting, motion carries. We are officially adjourned at 9:18 a.m. We have a special session coming up here at 10 o'clock. You all have a good day and may God bless.